Welcome to African Dark Scary Stories, Deadly Rebellions Edition. Tonight we uncover the chilling tales of Africa's bloodiest uprisings, stories where courage clashed with cruelty and hope defied impossible odds. What would you do if everything you loved was stolen? Your land, freedom, and dignity? Across Africa, brave men and women rose up, knowing the price of resistance could be their lives. Blood was spilled, villages burned, and thousands perished. These aren't just stories of rebellion, they're tales of horror and sacrifice. Step into the darkness with us as we explore the deadly rebellions that lit the path to freedom. The Zulu Rebellion, Bambatha Rebellion, 1906. What if standing up for your people meant facing an army with no way to win? In 1906, the British imposed a new tax on the Zulu people in South Africa. This tax made life unbearable, as the people were already poor. A Zulu chief named Bambatha stood up and said, "No more!" He called on his people to resist the British, and many warriors joined him. The Zulu fighters carried their spears and shields into battle, while the British came with rifles and cannons. The Zulu ambushed British soldiers in the forest, fighting fiercely. But the British were merciless. They hunted Bambatha's men like animals, burning villages and killing anyone they suspected of rebellion. Bambatha himself was captured and beheaded. His severed head was paraded as a warning to others. Though the rebellion failed, the Zulus' bravery became a symbol of resistance that would inspire future generations to fight for their freedom. The Herero and Nama Rebellion, 1904 to 1908. Imagine being chased into a desert with nowhere to hide and no water to drink. In Namibia, the Herero and Nama people were forced to give up their land and cattle to German colonizers. They worked as slaves, building railways and towns for the Germans. One day, the Herero and Nama could take no more. They rose up and attacked German settlements, killing soldiers and settlers alike. The Germans were furious. They sent an army to crush the rebellion. The Herero retreated into the harsh Kalahari Desert, thinking they could escape. But the Germans had a wicked plan. They poisoned the waterholes, burned the land, and surrounded the desert. The Herero people had no food, no water, and no escape. Thousands died from hunger and thirst, their bones left to bleach under the desert sun. Those who survived were sent to camps where they were treated worse than animals. The Herero and Nama Rebellion is remembered as one of Africa's darkest moments, a warning of how far cruelty can go when greed takes over. The Aba Women's Riot, 1929. What happens when thousands of angry women rise up against soldiers with guns? In 1929, in southeastern Nigeria, the British colonial rulers decided to tax women in the markets. This decision was the last straw for the women, who were already struggling to survive. They gathered in the thousands, wearing their traditional wrappers, and began a movement like no other. The women marched from town to town, chanting songs and dancing. They demanded the tax collectors leave their markets. At night, they held sitting protests, surrounding officials' homes and banging pots to keep them awake. The British were alarmed. Soldiers were sent to stop the protests, but the women didn't back down. They destroyed buildings, broke into offices, and burned property. The British responded with violence, shooting into the crowds. Hundreds of women were killed or injured. The women's courage shook the colonial government, and they succeeded in stopping the tax. Their rebellion is a reminder that even unarmed people can fight back against oppression. The Mau Mau Uprising, 1952 to 1960. What if you had to hide in the shadows of the forest, always running, always hunted? In Kenya, during British rule, the Kikuyu people lost their land. The British took it for themselves and treated the Kikuyu like slaves on their own soil. The Kikuyu formed a secret group called the Mau Mau, and they swore oaths to fight for freedom, even if it meant death. The Mau Mau hid in the forests, using guerrilla tactics to ambush British soldiers and their allies. By night, they would sneak into villages, destroying anything that helped the British. But the British struck back with brutality. They rounded up Kikuyu people into detention camps where they were beaten, starved, and even killed. In the forests, life was no easier. The Mau Mau lived with little food, always fearing betrayal. If caught, they were hanged or shot on sight. Some villagers were forced to betray their own people to survive. The rebellion became a living nightmare, with blood spilling on both sides. Though the Mau Mau rebellion ended in loss, the courage of those fighters helped pave the way for Kenya's independence in 1963. What if you were told that water could make you invincible until you saw your friends fall? In the early 1900s, in what is now Tanzania, the German colonizers were cruel. They forced the local people to grow cotton for German profits, leaving families hungry. The people whispered of a man named Kinjekitile Nwale, a mysterious figure who claimed to have spoken with the spirits. He gave them a magical potion called Maji, a sacred water he said could stop bullets. With this hope, thousands of villagers rose up, armed with spears and machetes, believing the spirits would protect them. When the first battles began, the people charged at the German soldiers with incredible courage. But something terrible happened. The bullets didn't stop. The Germans unleashed a storm of firepower, mowing down thousands. The Germans didn't just fight the warriors. They destroyed entire villages, poisoned wells, and burned crops. The land turned into a wasteland of ash and silence. By the end, over 200,000 people had died, not just from bullets, but from starvation. The spirits did not save them, but their fight planted a seed of resistance that would grow into the independence movements of the future. These rebellions may have been crushed, but their spirit lived on. Each fight against oppression inspired others, lighting a fire that would one day lead to African independence. The Maji Maji, Mau Mau, Herero, and Nama, Aba women, and Zulu warriors all paid the ultimate price, but their sacrifice planted the seeds of freedom. From the ashes of these struggles, Africans rose stronger, reclaiming their lands and dignity. These stories of horror remind us of the strength within us to resist injustice and create a brighter future. If these tales of courage inspire you, join us on African Dark Scary Stories. Deadly Rebellions Edition. Like, share, and subscribe to keep these powerful stories alive.